Hello and welcome to the Weekly Rushes, your rush through all your movie and streaming news. In recent weeks, I think we're probably going to have to call this the fortnightly footage. Though we will get to Weekly Rushes. It's just that as the film news comes through, I don't want to be sort of bombarding you with bits and bobs. I want to hit you with a whole load of stuff, a slew of movie news. So this week we haven't got any major sort of contentious sort of Hollywood dramas. Alec Baldwin is looking like he's going to sort of, not get away with it, but not be found guilty of corporate manslaughter. Gwyneth Paltrow, she's in court trying to reassure people that she wasn't involved in a hit and run of a chap on a skiing slope. And of course we've got Jason Sudeikis and Olivia Wilde involved in the whole sort of custody battle, with Olivia Wilde suggesting that Jason Sudeikis, the star of Ted Lasso, Olivia Wilde, obviously the director of Don't Worry Darling, she's suggesting that actually, or her lawyers are suggesting that actually Jason Sudeikis wants to bankrupt her in their custody battle. A news story that I did want to home in on, and I don't necessarily think there's an enormous number of Rick and Morty fans here. It's a kind of young adult type show. But we did report on the fact that the co-creator, the voice of the scientist, Justin Roiland, was up for domestic violence charges, and he was dropped by the broadcaster and the network that made Rick and Morty. He saw all of his essentially his jobs, his responsibilities rescinded. Well, nearly 2 years after the initial accusations from his ex-partner, he's basically been cleared. All charges have been dropped. The district attorney in Orange County stated that we've dismissed the charges today as a result of having insufficient evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. The reason I wanted to mention this was less about whether you're a fan of Rick and Morty, but it's what do you think of this kind of thing being reported about prior to any kind of judgment being found. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean something didn't happen or that there wasn't some issue. But if he's been found innocent, this story is now forever going to stick to him. Taken to social media, Justin Roiland himself said, "I've always known that these claims were false, and I never had any doubt that this day would come." He goes on to say, "Most of all, I'm disappointed that so many people were so quick to judge without knowing the facts, based solely on the word of an embittered ex trying to bypass due process and have me cancelled." Do you think that the details of cases like this should be revealed to the public prior to prosecution? Because of course this will now forever hang over his profile, his reputation and his career. Now again, I don't think there are many Shazam fans here. Shazam is the latest comedy sort of, light-hearted superhero film from DC Films. It's absolutely tanked at the box office relative to superhero films. It stars Zachary Levi, and Shazam 2, or Shazam Fury of the Gods, is part of that whole DC Films James Gunn stable, but this is very much an overhang from the old DC films rather than necessarily James Gunn's vision. Anyway, the film was absolutely tanked at the box office. It made just $30 million in its first weekend at the box office. Sounds a lot, but it really isn't. The first Shazam film made $53 million, and Fury of the Gods, this film, has cost $110 million to make. And what you have to understand is that's the budget, but then it costs another $100 million to promote it. So you're looking at it needing to kind of clear $250 million or $250 million to kind of just start crawling into profit. So of course, $30 million on its opening weekend, which will only go down weekend after that, is not good. But Zachary Levi, the star who plays Shazam, I don't know if this is kind of sour grapes or what, but he's kind of suggested that fans of the Snyder Cut, the Justice League and all that kind of stuff, Superman films, there's a huge sort of fan base that wants Snyder Cuts of everything to be made and believes that Snyder is the original director, it's his vision is the best vision and all that. Zachary Levi feels that Snyder fans have been partially responsible for it diving. He says they kind of they probably wanted it to fail, but also he sort of suggested, interestingly, he laid the responsibility at the feet of, no less, and you don't want to do this lightly, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson played Black Adam, who is, within the DC universe, Shazam's arch enemy. And apparently, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's character, Black Adam, was due to appear in some mid-credit sequence, but apparently he kind of squashed that, he rubbished it, he neutered it. He nixed it, he kneecapped it, all these kind of phrases. And Zachary Levi sort of seems to be suggesting, because he reposted or retweeted an article which kind of suggested that did Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson take a great big dump on Shazam, wanting instead to protect Black Adam and keep him for himself and put him in a new Superman movie, which interestingly now isn't going to happen because he wanted to be in a Superman movie that starred Henry Cavill, and as you're about to find out, the next Superman movie isn't the Henry Cavill suit. It's all very confusing. There's lots of kind of axes to grind at DC films at the moment. From what I've heard, I literally can't get myself there to watch it. It just isn't very good. Which, interestingly, this week, much earlier than normal, brings us to some of the new projects that are being made, casting decisions, creatives, pitches, films that have been greenlit, and all that kind of stuff. The first one is a Guillermo del Toro project. He wants to make Frankenstein. A Guillermo del Toro version of Frankenstein. Live action, obviously, he's just won the Oscar for Pinocchio, Best Animated Feature. This is allegedly, Guillermo del Toro has wanted to make Frankenstein for some years. We don't know whether it's going to be set within a modern setting, or whether he's going to go for the classic setting. There's a kind of vogue at the moment, isn't there, to revisit old classic monster movies. There's Robert Eggers' film Nosferatu being made. So a new Frankenstein. It's at early stages, but some of the actors that he's kind of courting for the film include Oscar Isaac, very good, Andrew Garfield, and flavour of the moment, taste of the crop, pick of the pack, Mia Goth, who at the moment can be seen in Pearl, and can also be seen in Infinity Pool. Guillermo del Toro, incredibly creative director. I've always had a few problems with him. I always feel that his ideas are great. I kind of want to like them more. I kind of get drawn in, and then they sort of fall a bit flat for me. Don't know why. I'm wondering whether this could end up being a little bit like The Shape of Water. There's no real clarity on who's going to play Dr. Frankenstein, whether Mia Goth is essentially going to be his love interest. Though, I tell you what I think, and no one else is sort of suggesting this, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Mia Goth is the monster. Why haven't we ever had a female Frankenstein? Or maybe he's going to sort of foreground the fact that Mary Shelley's original book was written by Mary Shelley, and Mia Goth's going to play Mary Shelley. Anyway, as I say, Oscar Isaac, well known for Scenes from a Marriage, the Disney Plus series Moon Knight. He was recently also being tapped to play Kurt Vonnegut the author Kurt Vonnegut in a series called Helltown. And as I say, Mia Goth coming off the back of Pearl and Infinity Pool. So this could look good with a cast like that, and Andrew Garfield is just brilliant to watch. Any Adam McKay fans out there? Adam McKay being the producer-director behind such projects as Succession. He made the recent Netflix hit Don't Look Up. I know lots of you like that. I didn't. He also made The Big Short, which I preferred to Don't Look Up. But again, I don't know, there was something about it that just held me back. He's pulling together a new project called Average Height, Average Build. And like the previous project, this has got a remarkable cast building. He's got Robert Pattinson lined up, Amy Adams, Robert Downey Jr., Forrest Whitaker, and Danielle Deadwyler from the recent film Till. This is being described as a serial killer comedy. And it's quite an innovative idea. I quite like the idea behind this. So Robert Pattinson's going to play a serial killer. He enlists a lobbyist who's going to lobby government, Washington, I guess, to change laws that will essentially allow him to get away more easily with killing people. Curious, isn't it? Robert Downey Jr. is going to play a retired cop who won't give up on the murders and tries to prevent Pattinson's serial killer from continuing in his sort of grisly sort of mission. This could be an Adam McKay project that I actually quite enjoy, because I do like the entire sort of host of actors there. And talking of Robert Downey Jr., we mentioned this on the Popcorn Junkies Instagram account. Robert Downey Jr. is being sort of courted for a remake from Paramount Pictures of the Alfred Hitchcock classic Vertigo that starred James Stewart and Kim Novak. This is interestingly being written by Stephen Knight, who's the man behind Peaky Blinders. He's also behind the new to be seen Great Expectations. He did the series with Jason Momoa. I mean, he's incredibly prolific. Stephen Knight. This must be a wonderful get. He's also been attached to writing a new Star Wars film, which is about the only sort of positive or productive move I've heard in the Star Wars franchise. Anyway, the Hitchcock estate have favoured Paramount, obviously, remaking this. Presumably it's going to be remade and parked in a modern setting. As I say, Robert Downey Jr. is courting the possibility of playing the lead role, the retired detective played by James Stewart, who goes on, he's recruited in a sense to kind of try and find a missing wife of someone, and then it becomes a film about obsession. It's almost stalking, actually, and it's quite a misogynistic. The original film's quite misogynistic as he tries to sort of change her hair colour and all this kind of stuff. One of the kind of interesting facts that's a bit of a film geeky kind of thing is that Vertigo was the first one to use something called the contrazoom, because he has vertigo. He looks down the stairs. And a contrazoom is where the lens zooms in, but the camera itself is physically pulled away, dollied or tracked away. They use one in Jaws when Roy Schneider sort of sits on his chair and someone's in the water and he hears shark, and then it sort of zooms in. It sort of contorts the background. It's a really clever device that Hitchcock used for creating the sense of vertigo in camera. That's what I love. It was an in-camera device. There was no special effects. There was nothing done in post. Really clever. So a Vertigo remake, there's a strong argument why remake it when you've got such a classic. Is it only going to fall short? But hey, Robert Downey Jr. could be a good fit. Oh my God, I'm such a fan of this actor, this comedian, this guy. I forget the name of his YouTube channel. I used to follow it so much, but he's so funny. Jack Black. Who doesn't like Jack Black? Maybe you don't like Jack Black. Do you like Jack Black? I love Jack Black. Can I say Jack Black again? He's set to star in a new Christmas comedy, which we need a good Christmas comedy. We need a good Christmas film. And it's coming from the Farrelly brothers. And the Farrelly brothers made things like There's Something About Mary, Dumb and Dumber. I mean, they're not to some people's taste. They're a bit sort of scatological and a bit sort of toilet humoury and a bit childish. But good fit, I think, with Jack Black. And obviously they worked on Shallow Hal with him too. Jack Black recently teased that there was some kind of Christmassy project on his social media. But this film is going to centre on a young boy who writes letters to Santa, but mistakenly sends them, I don't know if he's dyslexic or anything, but he mistakenly sends them to Satan instead. Does Jack Black play Satan? Does he play Santa? Or is Santa Satan? Is this a Satan Santa? I think this is something to look forward to. Jack Black is at his best when he's not contained or constrained and he's just allowed to run free. So hopefully the Farrelly brothers will be a good fit. Quentin Tarantino. I have to say, I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan. I think he's a film fan, he's a film geek, he knows cinema inside out and upside down. Even if you don't like a Quentin Tarantino film, they're always interesting. I think I said in our review, I wasn't a particularly big fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. They are often long. Django Unchained is absolutely one of my favourites. Pulp Fiction, obviously, Reservoir Dogs. Jackie Brown, absolutely brilliant. He's obviously said a lot that he's only going to make 10 films and he's going to stop making films after the age of 60. If you include Kill Bill 1 and Kill Bill 2, he's made 9 now. He's nearing 60. I think, is he 58 or 59? So he hasn't got long to go to finish his last film. That doesn't mean he's going to stop making stuff. He has talked or sort of teased the idea that he'll go into sort of TV or long, sort of a series, episodic stuff on television and streaming. There's rumour that his next project is going to be something called The Movie Critic. The Hollywood Reporter has been reporting this. And it's reportedly going to be about or inspired by the famous film critic Pauline Kael. Kael worked at Paramount years ago in the 1970s. She was instrumental in getting Bonnie and Clyde made, which kind of led to the sort of almost the movie brats, the kind of the new emergent kind of, not avant-garde, but sort of filmmakers in America in the 70s who broke the rules and kind of cracked open a new kind of American film language. So she's part of that. So you can see why he's kind of drawn to her. She's sort of part of that era that's really inspired him in his filmmaking. But I just wanted to read, he made a comment here, which I thought was really good. I like this interview. In an interview in 2012, he said this: I want, you can imagine him saying it in that kind of, I want to stop at a certain point. Directors don't get better as they get older. Usually the worst films in their filmography are those last 4 at the end. I am all about my filmography, and one bad film fucks up 3 good ones, because he literally does the mathematics. One bad film decimates the 3 around it. He says, I don't want to be that bad. I don't want to make an out-of-touch comedy in my filmography, the movie that makes people think, oh man, he still thinks it's 20 years ago. When directors get out of date, it's not pretty. True. There could be an argument that that's already happened, but I do think there's something, it might sort of make him laser focused on getting it right if this really is going to be his last film. It's always dangerous, isn't it, saying something like, I'm only going to do this and I'm going to stop here. Because then you have to do it in a sense. Or do you? Are you a Superman fan? I want to ask this question. I found Superman in the 70s, was it? Yeah, with Christopher Reeve. I found it eggy back then. I found it a bit naff. I found his curl a bit naff. Like I found Wonder Woman naff. But I didn't find Batman naff. I found his cape naff. I found the S a bit rubbish. I found his pants a bit rubbish. I didn't like the whole Clark Kent Lois Lane thing. Anyway, Henry Cavill didn't really bring. Well, I mean, obviously it was darker. It was more stylish. It was more complex. But I've always found Superman as the kind of shiny, sunny alter ego to Batman. I was always drawn to the darker sort of characters. So Superman for me was a bit sunny, a bit bright, a bit positive, a bit too positive, a bit too goody two-shoes. He's Superman. Well, anyway, James Gunn, director behind Guardians of the Galaxy, head of DC Films, said it so many times. He's going to direct the next iteration of Superman. It's called Superman Legacy. Henry Cavill, we talked about on the Weekly Rushes, isn't going to be playing Superman. He was unceremoniously fired. Has The Rock been unceremoniously fired too? But anyway, James Gunn didn't want to direct this. He wrote the script, but he says, just because I write something doesn't mean I feel it in my bones visually and emotionally. However, the long and the short of it is, I love this script that I've written. Imagine writing the script and going, oh, I really like that, gosh. So he's incredibly excited now to direct this film. As I say, he won't be played by Henry Cavill, and this will be the first time. This will be interesting to see how James Gunn deals with a sort of legacy, a sort of A-list legacy superhero, rather than a bunch of misfits. Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad, a bunch of kind of, you know, reprobates that are just kind of, you can chuck around and have a lot of comedy fun with. Superman, maybe he'll remove him from this sort of precious golden boy sort of image, which I think he needs. But are you a Superman fan? Do you like Superman? Back to Ridley Scott. In his late years, is he 80, 81? My God, he's churning out the projects and the films, isn't he? We had Alien Covenant on in the house the other night. I think he directed that, did he? He went back to Alien. Gladiator 2 is coming. We've talked about it before. Paul Mescal has been, cast or approached, or a must-have actor for Ridley Scott. He saw others, but he kept being drawn back to Paul Mescal. Well, he's casting Gladiator 2, but Barry Keoghan is joining him. Wow, the Irish are coming to Rome. So Barry Keoghan is going to be joining Paul Mescal, two Irish leads, in Gladiator 2, the sequel. And apparently he's in discussions to play Emperor Geta, I think that's his name, based on a real Roman emperor from history. The original film, obviously, was released in 2000. It was a massive hit. It was nominated for something like 12 Academy Awards. I think it won 5. It's completely transformed Russell Crowe's career. Paul Mescal has talked, I think he was talking on the red carpet at the Oscars, about how he's trying to beef up and get into the sort of physicality of a gladiator. So adding Barry Keoghan, I think Barry Keoghan's going to be excellent. Obviously, I keep forgetting when I talk about Barry Keoghan's filmography that in the recent The Batman, and although it wasn't in the film, there is a clip online on YouTube of Barry Keoghan playing the Joker for 10 minutes. He's another iteration of the Joker, and oh my God, he's good. And alongside him, more news about the Gladiator sequel is that Denzel Washington is teaming up with Ridley Scott. Obviously, they were together on a film called American Gangster, so he's returning to the fold. Denzel Washington, notoriously difficult to get to commit to projects. He really needs to examine the script. He rarely just jumps on things. He really wants to be certain that there's sort of depth and breadth and gravitas to the roles that he's going to take on. But who he's going to play isn't too certain. But they do want, I think, although you've got Barry Keoghan and you've got Paul Mescal, they're not superstars, though their Oscar nominations will make them more like household names. So Denzel Washington, I think, gives it a sort of big Hollywood star is at the helm of it. Though, is Denzel Washington box office gold? I don't necessarily think he is, whereas I think Paul Mescal and Barry Keoghan as a combo will be. Michaela Cole, you'll know Michaela Cole from I May Destroy You, and Anne Hathaway, who I haven't seen too much recently. They're to star together in a pop music epic entitled Mother Mary, interestingly from the director David Lowery. David Lowery made a ghost story about a sort of ghost of a person who died, sort of staying in a location and seeing all the different people that passes through their location. It's really good fun. He also made The Green Knight. I was so excited about that, but had Dev Patel. Barry Keoghan was in that too. Didn't quite deliver for me in the way that I was hoping it to. And most recently, the weird thing for David Lowery is he's directed the Peter Pan and Wendy film. And it's going to be a pop melodrama following a fictional musician and her relationship with an iconic fashion designer. Cole will be playing the fashion designer, Hathaway will be playing the musician. Which brings us to streaming news. And in streaming news, this project sounds fun. Could be considered a bit self-indulgent, but there's a vogue at the moment, isn't there, to make projects about yourself as an actor. Pete Davidson, I think, is making a series based on his life. Obviously, Nick Cage did The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, in which he played Nick Cage. This is a series, I think, for Apple TV, starring Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey as themselves. And I think if there's a story of sorts, it's them living together or coming together to live together with their families on a Texas ranch. It immediately led me to thinking, are they going to use their actual families as their families? But Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey are going to be playing themselves, and it's going to explore their friendship. I'm a huge Woody Harrelson fan. Matthew McConaughey, I sometimes find Matthew McConaughey a bit odd. But anyway, bringing the two of them together, obviously they were together on True Detective back in 2014. Can you believe how long ago that was? And they were great in that together. So anyway, the two of them coming together to play themselves. Hasn't got a title yet, but I think that could be fun. I think when Woody Harrelson is allowed to sort of, be free, he can be really free. Nicole Kidman. Did anyone else think Nicole Kidman was a little bit off her tits on the red carpet at the Oscars? If I didn't know better, I'd say she dropped an ecstasy tablet. I mean, don't quote me on that. Genuinely, she was in a weird place. She was kind of loved up, but kind of weird. She was just, anyway. She's going to star alongside Liev Schreiber in a new Netflix miniseries called The Perfect Couple. And it follows a woman, Celeste Otis, who marries who she thinks is the perfect man, and thus becoming the perfect couple. But it so happens that this perfect man, who's incredibly wealthy, might not be all that he seems when a body is discovered in the local harbour on the morning of the wedding itself. Suddenly, everyone at the wedding party is a suspect, so it sounds like a sort of whodunit. So that's a brand new series starring Nicole Kidman and Liev Schreiber. Been lots of dramas around the series Willow, starring Warwick Davis. Willow, the series on Disney Plus, was a sort of revisit or follow-up to the movie Willow from the 80s. I love Willow, sort of like Cole. I watched the first episode of Willow, the series, and thought it was ghastly. I mean, I thought it was ghastly. I so wanted to like it. I was so excited about the trailer. So I wasn't at all surprised to hear that it hadn't excited people or lit anyone's fires, or certainly hadn't done particularly well in the ratings. Anyway, it's been sort of up and down for this across the week. So then the story ran at the beginning of this week that Willow has been cancelled after the first series, which would kind of make sense. I mean, something similar happened to the Dark Crystal series too. We all loved the Dark Crystal series, conversely, and it still got cancelled because it didn't do much business for Netflix. But at the beginning of this week, it was suggested that Willow wasn't going to happen because they've let all the actors go. They've said, go on, take all your other jobs, it's not going to happen. But then later in the week, the creator of Willow, John Kasdan, I don't know whether he's just trying to sort of damage limitate, sort of came out and said, no, it's not simple cancellation, it's not like that. Everyone's just been told to go off, we're going to wait, we're going to rework it, we're going to think about it, and we're going to revisit Willow Series 2. I think they have to go darker. It was a bit too breezy. It was like a sort of, I don't know, a sort of high school drama set within Willow Fantasyland. It was weird, people having crushes on people and all that kind of, it was just a bit naff. Unfortunately, John Kasdan in his statement says it's absolutely not been cancelled. It's coming back. Don't worry. Something else has been written and Disney are coming back. I hate to say it, I think it has been cancelled. I think John Kasdan is delusional, and unfortunately, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Eddie Redmayne. Are you a fan of Eddie Redmayne? Lots of people are. I thought he was fantastic in The Good Nurse. I really did. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in The Good Nurse. Him alongside Jessica Chastain. It's a really good movie. Do check it out, in which he played a serial killer. He used to play the Jackal in a new series called The Day of the Jackal, obviously based on Frederick Forsyth's book. I've never been a fan of all this spy stuff, Frederick Forsyth, all that stuff. There was a 1970s film adaptation. My grandfather loved it. The creator and writer of Top Boy, interestingly, is working on it as the writer and is, I think, one of the executive producers on it too. So that could bring a certain sort of grit, street grit, The Wire-like grit to it, or something like that. I'm not, as I say, I'm not a fan of Cold War stuff. I'm not a fan of thrillery stuff. I'm not a fan of spy stuff unless it's the campness of something like, I don't know, James Bond or something like that. This story won't necessarily resonate for a lot of people, but it resonates for me because I'm an enormous fan. I'm very fond of, and I've communicated with him actually, Douglas Stewart, who's the writer of Shuggy Bane and his second book, Young Mungo. Shuggy Bane, fabulous. If you haven't read it, read it. It's very autobiographical, and it's about a young boy as he grows up in poverty-stricken family lifestyle in Glasgow with an alcoholic mother, and it's kind of about his love affair with his mum and watching her demise. The second book, Young Mungo, is a book about two working-class men in Glasgow who have an illicit, love affair. They fall in love with each other, but within the extraordinarily uber-masculine world of Glasgow, working-class Glasgow, this is obviously, something that can't be expressed. Well, Douglas Stewart has been working on a series for A24 and the BBC of Shuggy Bane. I think that's been made or is being made, but he's just signed up to do a similar series of Young Mungo, his second book, which is amazing. Full congratulations to Douglas Stewart. Which brings us to the films of the week, and there's 4 films of the week actually this week. First one, Infinity Pool. I've literally just come out of the cinema watching Infinity Pool. I don't want to give away too much, but wow, was it really hard to reassimilate into normal life after watching it. So this is a film by Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, infamous body horror filmmaker. This stars Mia Goth. She is like flavour of the month, as I said earlier. She's currently in Pearl as well. She's brilliant in Pearl. Please check it out. If you can deal with gore, check it out. But this film is gory. Infinity Pool it's another one of those films in the genre of sort of what I call wealth torture porn, i.e. watching wealthy people be put in deeply uncomfortable situations and caricaturing them. I'm thinking of things like Triangle of Sadness, White Lotus, The Menu. This sort of sits within that, set within a sort of exclusive resort, and it's what happens to Alexander Skarsgård and his wife within this environment when they meet Mia Goth, and it all goes a bit bloody weird. Expect a lot of sex, expect a lot of blood. It's extraordinarily explicit, but we will say more in our review. That's Infinity Pool. Next up is a film called The Beasts. This is a foreign film. It's set within Galicia's Wild West. It stars Denis Ménochet, who's a fabulous French actor. This is about nationalism. This is about xenophobia. This is about sort of outsiders moving into a part of Spain and how the people in that neighborhood deal with it. It's being described as something of a sort of rural noir horror. I'm really excited about this. I think this could be interesting. It's getting lots of rave reviews. It's a reminder of the fact that actually, you know, we often think of the UK being the only country that has this sort of xenophobic idea of the rest of the world, Brexit, you know, Europe, them versus us and all that. But this is doing something similar. And it might be a little bit of that sort of thing, you know, that tourists and people are buying up second homes in Cornwall. This is that similar sort of thing. Foreigners or people from outside the country or the rural environment coming in, taking it over, and then I think the local community take their revenge or something like that. But that sounds good. The Beasts is the foreign movie of the week. John Wick 4 is out. Can't say too much because I haven't seen John Wick 1, 2 or 3. All I do know is I saw the trailer for John Wick 4, and in fact I've seen the trailers for John Wick 3 too, and if only I could find the time to watch them all. It looks excellent. It looks fantastic. I'm a big Keanu Reeves fan. I find his sort of absent emptiness in his performances quite compelling, and I quite enjoy watching them. So this is the 4th iteration. It's already done stellar business at the box office in America. It's outperforming. Each John Wick film outperforms the one before, which I think is great because it just shows they've just stuck with it. It's big on stunts, brilliantly shot. It looks beautifully shot, beautifully choreographed. Camera choreography as much as stunt choreography looks excellent in this. So if you fancy a sort of, I think, seat of your pants thrilling ride, I think John Wick 4 is for you. Though the extent to which you need to know the original films, I don't really know. Everyone keeps telling me, Ninad, you keep telling me, watch the first 3. I really want to watch the first 3 before I watch 4. But the more they make, the more I have to see before I can go and see them, which is a bloody nightmare. And the final film of the week is A Good Person. This is a film directed by Zach Braff, the former partner of Florence Pugh, and the reason that's important is this stars Florence Pugh and presumably was made when they were together. Zach Braff made a film years ago called Garden State, which apparently has kind of been much maligned in recent years, being described as a bit pants and a bit naff and a bit whatever. It's a sort of classic, almost prototype indie movie, Garden State. Fabulous soundtrack. Anyway, he's directed this film. It's called A Good Person, and this essentially is about how a good person can do bad things. A bad person can do good things? No, how a good person can do bad things. Florence Pugh being the person who causes, I think, an accidental death whilst being on the phone driving her car. It then becomes a sort of indie portrait of how she makes amends, or because she's a good person, she doesn't necessarily need to be punished, or she doesn't need to, you know, does her goodness transcend the awfulness of something that she's done? I think it's something along those lines. It's not getting particularly good reviews. Florence Pugh is always good, but someone texted me earlier and said she even sings the music for the film. So is there no talent that this woman doesn't have? And there you have this week's Weekly Rushes, your rushed rush through all the movie news and streaming news of, well, in this case, the last 10 to 12 days. Tell us what floats your boat. What are you most excited about there? And I hope you have a wonderful movie and streaming weekend.